Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, take a seat, grab some popcorn, because today we're going to be talking about the almighty dyno. Now, what exactly is a dyno? Well, Google tells me that it's short for dynamometer, which isn't very helpful. It also tells me that it's a rapid move across a rock face to reach a hold, which honestly might be even more unhelpful. For this video, we're going to be taking a look at the hardest moves ever done, where all four limbs leave the wall for some amount of time. Then at the end, we're also going to have a section for paddle and coordination dynos that might not fit this requirement. Also, I know that there's been some crazy dynos done indoors, but those aren't very trackable, so I'm going to be sticking to outdoor dynos for this video. We're going to be starting off pretty easy here with single move V12s. The easiest climb that I thought might be still worth mentioning is Red Rocket, which is a harder version of the famous Rainbow Rocket in Fontainebleau. I've often seen this graded V11/12, but I have also heard both of these climbs might be soft, but they're probably impossible to grade anyways. We also have this rarely repeated gem in Red Rocks called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a reference to Ken Kesey's famous novel. It is at this point in the video where we're going to be introducing two of the greatest outdoor dynoers to have ever lived. Up first, we have Matthias Brock McVitis, who just might be the most prolific first ascensionist in dynoing history. Here are two beauties from his home country of Australia. Next, we have Juan Alonso Mancera from Spain. We're going to whet our appetites even more with a trifecta of one move V12s, two of which coming from Juan's home country of Spain,
Venga.
And one coming from France. Now, some of you dyno enthusiasts out there might be thinking to yourselves, I mean, this is cool and all, but France, Spain, and Australia? Isn't there a place he's missing? Well, my friends, yes. Yes, there is. There's genuinely an absurd amount of hard dynos in Rocklands and South Africa as a whole. In fact, I originally wanted to include all the V11 dynos as well, but I quickly realized that this video would be 4 hours long if I did that. Some standout V12s include Industry of Cool, which is a crazy coordination paddle on slopers. Super Duper Nova, which is a low start to one of the most committing moves I've ever seen. The Big Spooky, which is one of the most terrifying dynos on this entire list. And Into the Void, which, if you're a dyno lover, does life ever get better than this? I don't think so. By the way, the person who has FA'd the vast majority of these is Matthias, who happens to also be a physical therapist that I'm getting coaching from after sustaining an incredibly severe wrist injury a few months ago. So stay tuned for that video. Before we move on to the 8B dynos, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to some regular V12s with dyno cruxes mixed in. The first being Oral Office, again coming from Dyno Paradise. There's also Permanent Vacation in Saint Vrain.
Oh my god, dude.
And finally, Man of Steel, climbed by the Aussie legend himself. Now, we've already seen Matthias a lot, but the longest and potentially hardest dyno he's ever done again comes from Rocklands, and it is a harder version of superpowered V12, which we've seen before. This one is called Overpowered and is a massive backwards roof dyno to a completely blind jug. Now, I've never been here, but there's no doubt in my mind that the camera does not do this boulder justice on how massive this move has to be. Up next, we have a spicy 8B trifecta from none other than the Spanish dyno god himself. The first being Rainbow Crocket in La Pedriza, which looks like a much more cramped and more difficult to generate version of Rainbow Rocket. Also in Spain, the next two come from two different starts of the same boulder, called Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. By the way, I spent hours scrubbing this guy's entire Spanish Instagram and YouTube pages and could not for the life of me find Toy Story 1. So maybe he started with the sequel, but there's probably another version of this dino that I just can't find. Up next, we're taking a trip to Joe's Valley. You know how sometimes the setters at your gym will set like these heinous crimp lines and you think to yourself, why would I ever use these when I can just dyno to the jug? Well, it turns out some pro climbers still have this mindset because this is Charlie Barron doing a V13 dyno instead of doing the normal V10 crimp line of finger slut. Wrapping up the V13s, we're going to be going back to Dyno Valhalla with Double or Nothing V12-13. This looks like a harder and potentially even cooler version of Into the Void. Also known as Peak. Before moving on to the V14s, we're going to give some honorable mentions to normal V13s with some dyno cruxes mixed in. Starting off with the Bowhead in Suck Creek, Tennessee. This climb has one of the most interesting rock structures in this entire video, where you straight up do like a shoulder press before dynoing to the lip. We also have potentially the steeziest man on earth, Zach Gala, cruising through two absolutely classic lines in Sky and Slasher. Yeah. The last honorable mention we have is Skinsifer, which is located at the New River Gorge and is a direct version of a V12 called Relic Rapture Wrath. I've actually been to this location before, and it's one thing seeing these dynos on video, but seeing them in person, you'd actually be completely stunned at how these are even possible. Okay, so the only other world-class dynoist that might be able to challenge the Australian Beast and the Spanish Monster is America's own Charlie Barron. Back in 2021, he put up potentially the hardest dyno climb in the world, which has since been dethroned, with a low start to Predator Pounce. This is a V8 sequence into a one-move, massive V13 dyno. What makes this even more difficult is the fact that it looks also very dabby. So not only do you have to do this massive move, but you also have to avoid hitting your pads while doing so.
No way.
Another similarly insane FA comes from the strongest grip in the world, Yves Gravel. This two-move V14 called Carnage starts on genuine credit card holds. Like, look at this hold that he's brushing. Then to top it all off, you have to do a one-arm catch on this sloper. Insanity. Next we have two very similar looking dynos, one in Lake Tahoe and the other at the New River Gorge. These two are some of my favorite in the entire catalog, since it looks like there's sustained climbing mixed in with a genuinely insane double clutch dyno on crimps. Absolute cinema. Next we're going to be taking a trip to the Flatirons, with a low start to a V12 called Dyno. This is a pretty insane video from Drew, because most of these dynos end in a bucket jug, but here it looks like he's one-arming a crimp after taking a massive swing. Finally, what better place to end the V14s than going back to Orange Heaven with Mind Games. This is a pretty insane Nale Hukataival FA that I could find almost no info on except for a random Facebook post, and involves an all points off dyno, is a highball, and is V14. Please come back, Nale. Before we move on to the hardest dyno of them all, I just wanted to give a quick honorable mention to Sailor's Delight in Boone, North Carolina, and Jumpman in Boulder Canyon. Both of these V14s have pretty normal climbing into cruxy dyno finishes, and I thought they'd be worth mentioning. One dyno to rule them all. One dyno to find them. One dyno to bring them all, and in the darkness, bind them. Back in 2023, Juan Alonso Mancera put up potentially the hardest dyno ever done, and one of the hardest moves ever done as well. The move took Juan, arguably the best outdoor dynoer in the world, over 4 years of consistent effort to do. It's difficult to know from the video why this is so hard, but I'm guessing, along with being absolutely enormous, these start holes are probably a lot worse than they look and difficult to generate off of. This is like the silence of dynos. Also, this is like one of the most climbing things I've ever seen. This is arguably like the hardest move that has ever been done in our sport, and the YouTube video for it has 400 views. Now, it's been a while since I've checked in with the Church of Dynology. You know, I've kind of lost my faith a little bit in the past few years. But I'd like to take the time to formally nominate 3 potential candidates to be Pope and head of the church. And those are Charlie Barron, my coach Matthias, and the Spanish machine Juan Alonso Mancera. Vote in the comments who should take the crown. There are also a bunch of dyno cruxes within other V15s, and I'll quickly go through them. Southern Draw in Tennessee, where Zach Gala just straight up teleports sideways. The Smile in Rocklands, where Korean Jesus Sung-Soo Lee absolutely steezes on this horrifying move with only 3 pads. The Lazarus Pit in New Mexico, which straight up was FA'd like a month ago by Caleb Francher, and is the first proposed V15 in New Mexico. And finally, Practice of the Wild in Magic Wood, which is a very pumpy roof problem with this huge double clutch dyno in the middle. The only dynos that I can think of that are part of climbs that are harder than V15 are Sosa in Little Cottonwood and Es Pontas in Mallorca, which is my personal favorite dyno of them all. I think sticking this dyno 15 meters above the water would genuinely feel better than any drug humanity has ever invented. Like, I think winning the lottery would be trivial in comparison to sticking this dyno. It's so incredibly sick and is one of the things that got me hooked on climbing. Now, all points off dynos are awesome, but what about those sweet, sweet paddle and coordination dynos? Well, I've got you covered. There are a surprisingly huge number of these, and I know there are probably way more that I'm missing. Pretty much any hard climb with a jug finish at the end is a candidate for having one of these type of moves. One of the hardest coordination moves ever done has to be Austin Hoyt on Lucid Dreaming, which is one of the most iconic boulders in the world. We're also going to be giving a quick shout out to Will Bosey's new FA in Portugal, which isn't really a paddle, but definitely a coordination move, and one of the most unique hard climbs I've ever seen. And finally, who can forget Elias on Burden of Dreams, looking absolutely steezy as hell on one of the world's hardest climbs. I absolutely love seeing people find these coordination moves on these world-class test pieces. There's something just so fun to watch about it. Lastly, we're going to talk about 3 incredibly unique run and jump boulders. The first comes from Wyoming and is called Wonder V10 and is this kind of like run and jump into a mantle press or something. I don't know how this is even possible to grade, but this is as far removed from climbing as you can get on a boulder. World Climbing is taking notes as we speak. Next, we're going to be taking a look at the low start to Ellis Island V11 from Emil. In this video, he gets agonizingly close to sending it, but I'm not sure if he ever did. My guess would be it'd probably be around V12 with him doing sloper daddy stuff in the beginning into the run and jump V11 dyno. Finally, we have potentially what is the hardest thing in this entire list, which is a project in Moab, Utah, featuring an absolutely humongous run and jump. This is tall dyno god Ethan Pringle trying it, and he does not look particularly close. I would personally love to see some of the parkour pros on this, since I feel like they might be able to use some of their wall running skills on it. So Emil, if you're watching, if you're ever in the area, maybe take some of the store boys here for a whirl. Alright, thanks so much for watching. This video genuinely took dozens of hours to research and edit. Please consider liking and subscribing for a lifetime of healthy pulleys. I plan to post here almost every week, so I really hope to see you back here soon.